Hello, this is Dark Shades, and I am going to continue with part 2 on whether or not you should say no to a friend who asks you to lend money. Now, I guess I have to ask this question. You've lent them money. Now, how would you feel if you saw them eating out, buying clothes after they borrowed money from you? Sometimes. Are you the type of person who's going to scrutinise their purchases? You know, because that would be really unfair to determine their behaviour just because they borrowed money from you and you haven't given them a chance yet to pay them back. I mean, I can understand that happening if they had not paid you back for a while and then you do that. But I don't think it's something that needs to be done from the offset. So you see them in new clothes, car, eating out. They're telling you, when you ask them and say, oh, you know, I noticed you've got a new suit. That's a nice new bag you've got there. And those shoes, do you get them recently? And they said, yeah, I got it for 100 quid, you know. And this suit, it was a bargain, cost £250. And this bag, it cost me what? It was only 75 quid. You're thinking in your head, but you asked me to lend you £1,000 the other day. Is that what you're spending the money on? You don't say that to them, but in your head, you're thinking that. And you say to them, oh, but I thought you didn't have any money. And they say, well, I'm going for jobs, and I need to dress to impress. Can't go down there with my rags. So yeah, I got this because I can look good for interviews. The thing is with that is that, you know, you become judgmental. In your head, you're thinking you're supposed to use the money I lent you to get back on your feet. You're not supposed to be enjoying yourself and buying clothes with it. I can't even buy clothes with, you know, in my circumstances. That's money I was saving. These are the thoughts that are going on in your head. This is not what you're telling the person. But they are thoughts nonetheless, and they do affect your emotions. They make you feel resentful and angry. So, and then they say, oh, you know, there's this nice club opened up in the West End. Why don't you and me go? You know, I'll treat you. You don't have to worry. I'll buy the drinks. It's all on me. What? Just lend money. You just lend money from me, and now you're talking about going to a rave and you're going to be buying drinks. That can cause problems. You know, what do you do in those situations? What do you do in a situation where you've agreed that they pay £100 a month and then they're talking about, oh, I haven't got £100 this month, can I give you 50? Part of you will say, well, 50 is better than nothing. But it's all a part of those things that make you really bad about lending money to a friend. And it can break friendships. My mum always says money is the root of all evil. And I mean, I'm sure it says that in a lot of other places as well. You know, today I was listening on the radio, and there was the owner of this club Unity in Dunstable, and he'd fallen on hard times. The club wasn't as successful as he thought, and I don't know if he'd gone bankrupt, but he was being pressed for money that he had borrowed. Well, he'd contracted 2 services. I think one was training, it was £5,000, and I think the other one was electrical. It was I think that was £6,000. Anyway, it turns out that he needs to owe £11,000. And you had the 2 creditors on the line badgering him for money, saying, you know, he promised he'd pay. We had a payment plan and he hasn't kept to it. And the man is saying, well, look, I intended to pay, but these are my circumstances. I couldn't help it. You know, I'm going to get my solicitors involved, blah, blah, blah. And the radio presenter is kind of saying, look, you know, it's okay to say you're trying to get things worked out, but these people have to pay their mortgages, they have to pay their bills, and because you're not repaying the loan like you said you would, they're in dire straits. And you know, that he said something like he really thought it would be successful, but he realised that the club was too big. It needed entertainers, and it was better for big shows. Anyway, he'd made a business mistake, and he'd borrowed money and he couldn't pay it back. So, you kind of think to yourself, whose fault is that? Is it his fault for making a calculated risk? Does he deserve to be gunned down and shot because he can't repay the debt that he promised? It's how much, it's how much you believe that it's their fault, or what have they done? Have they used all their best endeavours to try and put things right, or are they just leaving it and getting people frustrated? Were they being irresponsible and careless? Is that one of the reasons? Were they made redundant? Are they a victim of unavoidable circumstances? Like some people, you have bad weather and a tree falls on their house. I mean, yes, they're supposed to be insured. Now, are they being careless because they weren't insured? And now, because they weren't insured, they're now asking you to give them money or to lend them money so they can get, the roof fixed or whatever problems happen through bad weather. You might say, look, you're irresponsible for not insuring yourself. Why should I bail you out? It's not fair. Why should I use the money I've been saving and I've been quite responsible and just give it to you? But supposing there's a death or illness in the family, does that justify you lending them some money? I think I mentioned that reason before, but it is a pertinent one. It's one of those reasons that tug on your heartstrings. The person who's vulnerable, they may, death is unexpected. They don't have the funeral money for the funeral, and they're scraping around to get money. Are you borrowing money? That's another thing. How do you repay? Are you a good repayer? And who are you borrowing from? Can you afford to pay it back? Supposing you're made redundant, sometimes you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes. And I remember I was made redundant, about 8 years ago, and I had a repayment mortgage. And because of I was made redundant, I didn't borrow from anybody. But what I did really, in a sense, but I borrowed from the bank and I remortgaged and took out an interest-only mortgage that was much cheaper. Well, I thought it was cheaper to repay, but as a result of taking out a 10-year mortgage, I actually ended up paying a hell of a lot more. And I never managed to go back to a repayment, and because of that I set myself up to fail. I call myself, sometimes I chastise myself and I beat myself up for doing that. I say I should have just persevered and did the repayment, and then my house would have been paid off now. But I didn't, and I can't cry over spilt milk. But it's one of those things that I say to myself, that was irresponsible of me. But we all get ourselves in tizzies. I don't think I would personally. I wouldn't ask a friend for money because I know how inconvenient it can be, and sometimes even if they don't want to say no, it does put a strain on the relationship. I mean, you'd have to really have a strong bond with somebody, trust them explicitly, and know that if they ask you for money, you'll pay it back. And if you ask them for money, they know that you're going to pay it back. I have such a friend. I think I've got about 2 or 3 friends that I would trust to lend them money. So they do exist, and I would definitely loan. I mean, I'd still have a limit on the loan, because when people fall on hard times, you have to kind of work out how much can they afford to pay back. Now, somebody says to me, or one of my friends, regardless of how much I trust them, if one of them came to me and said, look, Myrna, lend me £5,000, it'd be a flat no. it'd be a flat no. She'd have to look around 5 different friends to lend her 1,000 each. You know, that's what she would have to do, or he would have to do. More likely to be a she though. And that's the way I would do it, because I'd show willing, you know, but there's no way, because if she's in hard times anyway, you know, it's going to be difficult for her to pay me back. That amount of money is going to put under a lot of pressure and a lot of strain. So I'd have to be sensible in how much I lend someone. And like I said, you can only give what you can afford to lose. I mean, one of the things that I benefited from, when I say on the one part I was irresponsible, but on another part I was responsible, because I had mortgage protection, which covered me when I was made redundant. So I made use of it, and it was really a worthwhile investment. So that paid the mortgage for that term. The only thing is because and it probably would have paid the repayment, but because I didn't have any other income, and you know, the benefit people, they wait like 6 months before they start paying you, so you need something to tide over. So I didn't feel safe to pay the whole of the repayment and then be struggling to do my day-to-day things and pay my bills. But it did help, and I did have that in place, and it did help me get through. So, and it's credit cards, you know. I remember another thing is that, you know, when you take out these contracts, these phone contracts, and you lose your job, you're paying like 40 quid a week, and when you're earning good money, that doesn't come like anything. But when you're made redundant and you have to cut down, you know, that isn't excessive, that is like a luxury. And I remember also during that period trying to get my contract reduced, and the telephone companies said an absolute no. I said, look, I've lost my job, I can't pay £40 a week. They said, that's what you contracted for, that's what you've got to pay. There was no leniency, no human dynamics in that conversation at all. And I left that phone call feeling so hurt and disgusted. And I said I would never take out a contract again, and I haven't. You know, when I've got money, I'll buy a phone, a newer phone, and I'll take out the minimum contract. You know, one of those SIM only for £15 or whatever it is. And that's what I did. And I do that to safeguard myself, because I wouldn't want to be in a position like that. And so you do that with credit cards. You make sure you have, you don't have lots of credit cards, or so if something like that happens, you minimize your outgoings. And this is when you intend to borrow. If you're in a situation that forces you to borrow, you know you've already mitigated against the worst case scenario, so that you don't need to rely on anyone too much. In the end, I thought to myself, you know, rather than be in a position where you do have to borrow, or you are in a situation where you're homeless, you downsize and you make sure you manage your affairs as best as you can. This is part 2 of Should You Say No to a Friend Who Asks You for Money? And I am Dark Shades. So part 3, the final part, is coming up next.